What I like about Trapper is the satisfaction of setting down my traps in valid areas that I'm at least 96% certain survivors may step on, especially if a survivor is hooked in the basement and you just flood the shack with traps. I legit think that's one of the most powerful techniques in the game if you could pull it off. It leaves survivors somewhat hopeless unless they really know what they're doing. Without using the basement technique though, it still feels great for survivors to get caught because it rewards you for having good map knowledge and deciphering exactly how the survivor will make that wrong move in order to capitalize on it, for them not being aware of their surroundings. However, playing as them can feel so painful at times, especially against 100,000 hour players. It's like, yeah, it feels awful when a survivor gets trapped from a far distance and they manage to escape, but Trapper doesn't have a power of survivors are god tier loopers. You may have preset a trap around strong tiles, but sometimes they would expect it and continue to disarm your traps. I know Trapper is a very standard killer and he's fun when survivors manage to get caught on his traps, but he does have that dry spot of having to have the survivors make that mistake. That's literally all he's got. I mainly like Wraith while playing with the all-seeing blood add-on. I find it really enjoyable on Midwich more, considering it's a small indoor map with more than one floor. Using it to see survivors from upstairs while you're downstairs, vice versa. It's just entertaining to me. Even without the need of being on the map like Midwich, if survivors are aware of you while cloaked, using this add-on can help you make a good play when mind gaming around strong towers since you can see their aura. On the flip side, playing Wraith on certain maps where pallets are literally chained to one another like the game in Fractured Cowshed can leave them pretty invulnerable, especially if you're facing really good survivors. Maps that have strong tower loops where the survivor can visibly see the killer while looping like Temple of Purgation could be a rough one for Wraith too. Maps like these almost entice you to tunnel and camp while playing someone like Wraith because there's so many resources cluttered closely together or loops where survivors can clearly see the killer, making it more difficult to get it down. I like the feeling of downing survivors with my chainsaw while playing Billy. It feels so rewarding because he's really difficult to play. To have to calculate when and how exactly to curve around tiles and down survivors at the right time isn't easy in my opinion, especially since most maps already have bad map RNG, which just makes it 10 times more complicated. However, I don't like all variations of Cold Wind Farm. We already talked about Cowshed, but in general I don't really find the maps that appealing anymore. I generally liked them before though, when it wasn't daytime, but that was pretty much it. I just think it's too much open space with corn everywhere you look and most of the tiles can be really frustrating. The way I look at it, I guess I can somewhat appreciate Cold Wind for being such open maps, considering Singularity is my #1 killer right now. I like Nurse for knowing that I'm playing as the best killer in the game. I really don't play Nurse, but when I do, it's usually when I'm in comp mode, which is rare. There will be times throughout the day, because it's usually a certain time, mainly the morning, where I run into much stronger survivors. I will have to camp and tunnel with any other killer, but since I find that boring, I sometimes resort to playing Nurse. Don't get me wrong, sometimes people are that good that you still have to camp and tunnel while playing her, but since she's so strong, I feel like it's not much of a necessity at times. However, I feel Nurse doesn't play the game. She doesn't have to break pallets or vault windows like the rest, and she's overall not difficult to play if you're an experienced player. An adjustment to make her have to break pallets and vault windows while keeping her teleport I think will be really healthy for the game. I love playing Scratch Mirror Myers, especially on Larry's. Without this add-on, I would of course still play Michael, just not as often. I love catching survivors off guard while using this add-on. Though it mainly works on indoor maps, it's really a good time. You just know that you're jump scaring the survivors as they frantically search interior for where you could be. On the other hand, Michael does fall in line of being one of those killers that just feel absolutely miserable to play considering how limited his power is. Especially on maps like Cohen where the corn is blocking you from trying to stalk survivors. That tends to happen often around other tiles as well though. This was Behavior's first license and it is only Michael Myers, so I could see why he feels this way, at least in my opinion. Similar to Trapper, what I like about Hag is setting my traps in appropriate areas where I know the survivors will cross, possibly without notice. Especially when you set a trap on the opposite side of a pallet, the survivor thinks you're going to teleport, but they end up running right into you. Sometimes they would try to greet the pallet and ignore the teleport, but I would ultimately wind up catching them anyways. Hag is fun to play as, but on the contrary, not so fun to play against. When I play against Hag, it's like, yeah, I like those little mind game moments when I trigger a trap near a pallet and have to decide what's my next or her next move, but she technically can't chase you, which is the sole purpose of fun when playing as Survivor anyways. She has to rely on her traps in regard to her being 4.4 MS, which isn't a terrible thing, but she can't chase. Doctor's design is one of the most unsettling out of the killers. I like how just by looking at him you could tell that this guy is clearly out of his fucking mind and lost touch with reality. Every time I see that shit on his head, I just think of that known inmate in Manhunt who you had to electrocute in order to get the Smiley's attention, and that exaggerated smile with those piercing glowing eyes that never blink just adds to the horror. When I see him, I see a genuine madman, no doubt. I just wish I enjoy his gameplay the same way I enjoy his design. Doctor isn't a terrible killer in my opinion, but I just don't find his gameplay too enjoyable. It's all about timing and finding, which is key, but it can be 50-50 at times. Like, I'd rather play Pyramid Head where I can use Punishment of the Damned that goes through collision and actually injure survivors on impact, instead of having to electrocute them with Doctor and chance of maybe getting a hit. Yeah, both their kits are different, but I feel even with Doctor's other elements of his power, like locating survivors, which is a good thing since it's a free UAV, survivors hallucinating, having to snap out of it, that's all cool and all, but I just feel it isn't enough nor enjoyable. It adds a ton of aesthetic to his power, which is a fantastic thing, but I just never got really into him. I always like playing Huntress in general, but I particularly like the Stealth Huntress build, which can be so much fun. It's funny because survivors least expect a stealthy Huntress considering she has a lullaby. After reloading in the locker, I would become undetectable for 30 seconds and see survivors' auras that's close to the lockers with the help of a Wooden Fox add-on and Darkness Revealed, and try to creep up on survivors to get insta down with the help of her Eerie add-on. When I hook the survivor, they suffer from Plaything, which makes them oblivious until they cleanse a totem. Monitoring and Abuse is meant to reduce her radius to 12 meters to catch survivors off guard. I really just have Ruin just to have Ruin, but when survivors start trying to find it, it's a chance they will run into me. I love this build. However, when playing against Huntress, it can be annoying because her hitboxes are so off sometimes. Like, fuck a Hatchet, she be throwing a whole battering, bro. Other than that, I really got no beef with Huntress. I like when playing Bubba, you rev up your chainsaw or do a chainsaw sweep during chase. The survivor hops in the locker in hopes of avoiding it, only to get grabbed out of it anyways. It's hilarious. Sometimes they get lucky and get away with it, but when it does happen, it's the best thing ever. Good old locker duel, gotta love it. I don't like when Bubba's camp, but I do respect it. Bubba is fun to go against in my opinion without him needing to camp. I just think it derails the fun completely because you can expect him to camp there until yourself or a teammate is out of the game. It's just boring, but it does work in scenarios where gens get completed so quickly to the point where all Bubba could do was camp, so I highly understand. I love the dream world when playing as and against Freddy. It just makes most maps look so different to the point where it looks like a new map. That wasn't over exaggeration, but the dream world just makes the map pop, especially for Glenville. I'm so glad they added this feature to him. It actually gives you that vibe that you're asleep or in a lost place. However, his gameplay is not entertaining in my opinion. Yeah, it's good that they actually made Freddy more viable than he previously was, but it's just very dull to me. He just hinders you in a way that's not engaging by simply spawning blood pools and can teleport to gens. He can also spawn fake pallets, but who really falls for those these days? I think the issue with Freddy is that his power works just by a push of a button and doesn't have any flavor to it. Like, at least with Clown, you have to actually aim and throw the bottle to hinder survivors. And with all teleporting killers, there's actually a process during or before the teleportation. Freddy just does it. Pinhead just teleports too, but at least he has flavor to his core power. Having the wrist bear trap trigger on survivors, I mean, who doesn't love that when playing Pig? Probably not the survivor that happened to, but that's an easy one. However, the game is a palette nightmare. Don't get me wrong, sometimes I like to play the game only if I have a build that's ready for it, but once that map sneaks up on you, it's not even DVD anymore. It's just a palette simulator. I'll be honest with you, I didn't really play Clown much before. It was really out of the blue when I decided to say fuck it and play Clown, but after Singularity release with his unique perk Force Hesitation, I started to love playing Clown a lot more often. I use this build all the time when I play Clown and it's so much fun when it works. Whenever I down someone, anyone within 60 meters of me will suffer from the hinder status effect for 10 seconds with a 20% reduction to movement speed with the help of Force Hesitation. The fact that I'm Clown, who can already slow them down, and bring in the Flask of Bleach add-on, which adds additional hinder penalty with Save the Best for Last to keep up. Love this build. It's not the greatest in the world, but when it works, it works. I guess what I don't like about Clown is when you face him, you have to pre-drop pallets. I normally like to greet pallets, so when I face Clown, I already know what's in store and it breaks my heart. I generally like the way Spirit works, just having to solely rely on hearing. When she was first released, she was a lot scarier considering you couldn't hear her phasing, but she's all around a very diverse killer and I'm glad we have her in the game. Some of the satisfying mind games that you can pull off from either side, whether that's playing as or against Spirit, just makes her a good time, at least in my opinion. I know some people hate facing her, but I generally have no issue with facing her. I mean, I would rather face her than Nurse, just saying. I would love it if we got another killer that solely relies on hearing like Spirit. However, if I had to choose one thing I dislike about Spirit, because I generally don't think I have one, I would have to dislike the way Spirit passive phases during chase. Some points it looks like she's doubling back while looping her, making it a bit more unpredictable where she's gonna turn, but it's just her animations. It really isn't anything too crazy, like I don't want to remove anything, but her animations do be throwing me off sometimes. Not gonna lie, I like playing Legion when survivors don't really know what they're doing. Sometimes while I'm Legion, they will heal, group up, and mend nearby me. Basically everything you shouldn't be doing against a Legion. So when I actually get to pull off a 5-chain combo is usually because that's the case. On the flip side, when you play against people who know how to counter Legion very well, Legion just feels kinda dull at that point. You can barely pull off any combos, probably like a 2-hit combo max, and the other survivors will already be all the way across the map. There's no point in trying to catch them from that far because your power will run out unless you have the Never Sleep pills add-on. But I'm not in love with that add-on. It's okay sometimes. It's really not the survivor's fault for countering Legion so well. I mean, you can only blame the power, but when survivors counter them well, it just feels like all there is to the power is to sprint at a fast speed, vault windows, vault pallets, and make one survivor mend when they're hit. 2 if you're lucky. You usually want to activate Frenzy, hit the survivor you're chasing. If there's no survivors around, you can either end Frenzy and continue chase, or sprint away from the survivor you hit while Frenzy is still active, possibly get another survivor's killer instinct, end Frenzy, go after the highlighted survivor, and repeat. It's efficient to play Legion that way, but I don't necessarily enjoy it. I overall just like Plague's gameplay in general. She isn't too exciting or boring to play, just more so down the middle, which is okay. I really don't have anything too special to add to her. I just really play her just a player. However, if I had to choose one thing I don't like about her, it would have to be her hit animation. It's pretty bland in my opinion. Then again, it's like, what else can she do after hitting them? The fact that Plague has dialogue, even though we can't understand it, I think would have at least been cool to add it during animations, or maybe after she hits them, she says something, but it's nothing too serious. I like getting someone marked as Ghostface, obviously. It's the most satisfying thing in the world, especially when it's a clean mark and you insta down them immediately within that same sequence. I just feel like a true stealth professional when I do that, because I know I caught that survivor completely off guard and remained stealth while doing so. It's really rewarding. On the other hand, if I had to choose one thing I don't like, is when you play against Ghostface, stare at him for a decade and he still manages to mark you. It's not extremely annoying, but it can be when you knew for sure that you had a complete line of sight of him. What I like about Demo is his shred ability. It's pretty fun to use, especially when you're really good at predicting survivor's movement and timing it right. If Demo only had his portals and not his shred, I don't even think I would be playing him at times that I do. Also because I like to pair Save the Best for Last with shred, so I know I won't lose stacks as long as I connect my shred on the obsession. However, what I don't like about Demo is not even his fault really, more like Netflix, but I don't like that Demo is no longer here. I mean, he's here for the people that bought him, but unfortunately for people who probably discovered DVD late and happened to be a Stranger Things fan, didn't get him. We also could have got other cool cosmetics instead of. It does suck that Stranger Things is not here anymore. I do hope we get a second chapter with Vecna as the killer, with Eddie and Robin as the survivors. I know that would make Stranger Things fans really happy. What I like about Oni is that he's overall a really fun killer in general. I like the snowballing aspect, which eventually leads him to his power. Just having to chase multiple survivors and not chase one person, since you get your power faster that way. It can be miserable when survivors are godlike, but it's worth it for Blood Fury. And of course, when you activate Blood Fury, all hell breaks loose and all survivors can end up on the ground in seconds. Other than that, if I had to choose one thing I don't like about Oni, is what I said about miserable chases against good survivors because you don't have a power yet. But that is all part of playing Oni. If Oni had Blood Fury immediately, that would be too OP. I love Death Slinger even through some changes that they made to him. I just love shooting survivors. It's one of the funnest things in the game, especially when you hit those juicy shots from the farthest distance. I just feel like Deathshot or some shit like. I think Death Slinger would just be one of those killers I would keep playing no matter what. He's just a really fun killer in my opinion. If I had to choose something I don't like about Death Slinger, it would have to be that he no longer has a lightning fast ADS speed. I know it was probably unhealthy for the game, but I do miss hitting those quick shots. That's when Death Slinger was in his extreme prime. I love Pyramid Head in general. I feel like he's a great killer. Using his power is really fun, especially when you take the risk of using it when the survivor is not about to interact with a pallet or window. That's usually how I play him though. I don't fully recommend it if you're trying to play him serious. When you're playing for fun, it's a roll of the dice if you're gonna hit the survivor or not, but it still feels great when you do. However, his perks aren't all that great. Charlotte Torment is getting a pretty hefty buff, which seems like it will be an okay perk, but in general they just seem very mediocre. I don't see any killer using Pyramid Head's perks in general when I play Survivor. When I do, it's really rare. I love playing Blight in general, but what I really like about him is his lobby theme. I think this is the most beautiful score out of the killer's lobby music in the game. It sounds like the word tragedy as a theme song. To think about his unfortunate backstory as you listen in just makes the tone of it very powerful. Well done, Michael F. April. What I don't like about playing Blight is when I rush into something and start to slide off. Pretty common at this point. It's pretty annoying. I know it's happened to every Blight player. What I like the most about twins is the idea of playing as a baby. I know the devs said Victor isn't a baby, but that kind of looks like a baby to me, fam. I guess I would say the whole idea of playing Victor is pretty cool. I mean, Victor is all the power anyways. It's really a hit and miss when I play twins most of the time, but running around as Victor is a fun time, especially when you got some great pounces in. However, I really don't like that Victor doesn't have any cosmetics and is probably never getting none. The people who even do play twins want it, and I think it would make people want to play twins who don't play them, especially if he had a Chucky cosmetic, but I would really want Chucky himself in the game though. I guess I just like playing Trickster. He isn't too incredible to play, but he can be fun once you're in the mood. I think it's the satisfaction of hearing those blades shatter on survivors repeatedly whilst having killer aim in the process. On the flip side, he is 4.4 MS, which is understandable for him being a ranged killer, but damn, it feels awful when you have one blade left and you need to hit the survivor with 2 blades in order for them to go down. I'll let that sink in. I like playing Nemesis with Save the Best for Last. In particular, since you M2 with the whip, you can stack up on tokens for your Save the Best for Last and keep all 8 tokens all game. It feels really nice to have that in your pocket along with having the range attack. So in case you just wanted to M1 the survivors except for the accession, you have that reduced cooldown. However, I wish there was more to do with his zombies. Don't get me wrong, they can come in clutch sometimes by getting in the survivor's way, infecting or injuring survivors rarely and spotting them out for you. But I do wish there was more to them. Maybe something like Nemesis being able to call the zombies to a certain area of your choosing and they would start to wander around that area. I think that would be a neat mechanic for him to have.
I have such sights to show you.
What I like about Pinhead the most, aside from him being one of my favorite killers in the game, is the way his power mechanic works in general. Especially when you manage to chain someone through collision and follow up with a hit. It just feels solid when it all connects like that in one go while the survivor is still chained and the chains don't break so quickly. What I don't like is not really Pinhead's fault, but something that relates to Pinhead, which was the Hoarder and Franklin's item nerf. Hoarder and Franklin's was really good on Pinhead because it gave you the chance to keep activating chain hunt. I understand why the devs took it away, but damn, I miss it already. I like to play Artist from time to time, but what I particularly like about Artist is when you catch and injure a survivor with your crows from a distance, especially the technique of placing one crow behind another and launching them both in hopes of catching that targeted survivor and injuring them. However, I never liked area crows. The map is not as big as it used to be, but I just don't like that main building, especially when you're a M1 killer like Ghostface. The rest of the map is pretty miserable with there being pallets parallel to one another most of the time, making it easier for survivors to chain together, but that main building just annoys me by how there's nothing really back there on the right side and then it leads down to a window with a breakable door next to it. Obviously getting rid of the breakable door is the best play just to get it out of the way, but it can be a chase engine to some killers to the point where it's best to not chase the survivor if the survivor is looping it, especially if they have live. When I play Sadako, I fully like to condemn survivors and kill them with inexorable stare. I like this the most because of how rare it is for it to be pulled off most of the time, because realistically condemn starks are meant to slow the survivors down and make them retrieve tapes, which they will eventually do because they don't want to get killed off obviously. But when you harass them enough, or it's that handful that will actually take the risk, I love killing them with the stare. On the flip side, her gameplay can be pretty miserable because there's only so much she can do but catch survivors by surprise. Much survivors will probably see her coming though anyways. I mean, in indoor map she has more of a chance, but that does fall in line with any other stealth killer. That's why people mainly run the condemn build, so they can kill the survivors with the stare and actually have a chance to pull off something. People seem 50-50 about the changes coming for her. She seems somewhat okay in my opinion, but who knows, maybe she is, maybe she isn't. I gotta play the updated version of her more. I love the Nightfall ability, especially with the add-ons to decrease the cooldown after a teleport. I feel like I'm everywhere throughout the map in a matter of 15 seconds. That's how crazy Dredge mobility can be. It's fun having that hit and run style mindset during Nightfall, for you can teleport, hit one survivor to then teleport across the map and hit another. Not to mention it literally sounds like you in the depths of hell from all the crying and moaning you can hear. Hands down one of the dopest abilities in the game in my opinion. I really don't think there's nothing I specifically dislike about Dredge. Maybe the fact that his remnant could often have a very simple counter to it by just holding W out of the area when he spawns it, but you gotta know when you spawn your remnant at the right time, often in tight areas where you could keep sight of the survivor and push them toward the remnant then attack. I like playing Wesker in general. I think he's a very fun killer. Nothing beats the throw of tossing survivors left and right. It's so good. What I like about playing Wesker is that he could also use his powerful mobility to close the distance between you and the survivor. If the survivor is pretty far away but you have line of sight of them, you can simply catch up and be right back in chase. It can really come in handy. I especially like catching survivors within the second bound when it's a L-like pattern. What I mean by this is charging my bound. When I see a survivor, the survivor turns a corner, I dash forward to then dash a second time, turning that corner and grabbing the survivor in the process. Wesker is one of those killers that I would never stop playing as well. There's nothing I really dislike about Wesker besides playing him on Cohen Farm, where there's too much open space to the point where you can't injure a survivor with a grab or throw. It could get annoying, but it's not the worst thing in the world. I think what I specifically like about playing Knight sometimes is when I hit the guard and Knight attack combo, which is when you and a guard are really close to the survivor, and once the guard manages to get a hit, you immediately follow up with a hit as well, basically syncing your attacks at the same time. It feels amazing to pull off because it's so beneficial. You didn't have to follow up with another successful guard spawn or continue chasing the survivor because the combo already saved so much time. People don't like Knight, but I really enjoy him honestly. However, his power can feel very 50-50 if you actually have fun with his power by trying to cast survivors from a certain distance with your patrol line. It's literally a hit and miss power that won't come in handy if you attempt to take risk. Yeah, it gives you the haste to partially make up for it in the distance, but it's just not worth it in the end because if a guard does spawn on a survivor, you have to rely on them to get injured. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. You can use the guard just to apply aggro on a survivor while you chase another, or team chase the survivor with your guard, but it's just a better feeling when the guard actually gets a hit off, in my opinion. What I like about Skull Merchant's power specifically is the fact that when a claw trap is on a survivor and they vote a pallet, it breaks. It's some spice to her power because otherwise I feel like she's a dull killer. There's nothing she can really do but just defend generators and totems. It may be those moments when you place a drone at a strong tile, since that makes you undetectable. Survivors may think you left the tile, meanwhile you're hiding behind a wall waiting for them to run out, then catch them. But that rarely happens though. I just wish there was more to her power, like maybe controlling the drones in some way, because her power in general is really lackluster in my opinion. Like I said before, if you enjoy Skull Merchant, play her, love her, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. We're all here to enjoy the game after all, and any form of enjoyment of our pleasure.
All things will succumb to my design.
Singularity is my favorite killer in DBD right now, and I love playing him overall. The joy of shooting the biopod at something, tagging a survivor with slipstream, and then teleporting to the survivor to relentlessly chase them down is so much fun. I think what makes playing Singularity so much fun is that it's so much you have to plan and process, with it all feeling beneficial in the end. When you place those biopods, you know that those survivors will be crossing in this way. He technically watches over the map like he's a titan or something because he has eyes everywhere if you play him right. I especially like teleporting behind survivors through the biopods because similar to Trapper and Hag, that rewards you for having good map knowledge and being aware of where the survivor is gonna go before you can teleport to them. If I had to choose something I dislike, it would have to be EMP usage. Like if you just slipstream the survivor, a well targeted slipstream too, only for them to have an EMP or snatch EMP and dip. EMPs they get nerfed though, so it isn't really bad at all like it was before. Plus you could quickly slipstream them again if you have enough experience with Singularity and follow up on the survivor, but it can get annoying when it feels like every survivor keeps getting one in a short amount of time and you have to repeat the process of slipstreaming them over and over again. What do you like or dislike about a certain killer in the game? Let me know down below. Love y'all, take care, I'm gonna see you on the next one, and peace.